This tutorial is for 5th grade Module 3, Lesson 9a. In this lesson, we're going to use both the fraction model and multiplication to make like units so we can add our fractions. If we look at the first example, we're adding 1/4 to 3/5. In the past, when we did this, we started by drawing each fraction on the fraction model. So I'm going to start there. I'm going to draw my 1/4, dividing my fraction model into fourths, and then I'll shade 1/4. On the other model, I'll show my 3/5. This time I'm going to draw my lines horizontally. And I'll shade 3/5. From there, to make like units, we will draw each fraction on top of the opposite model. For example, I'm going to draw my fifths on top of my fourths. So I'll draw those same horizontal lines. Now we're going to see how we've actually multiplied our numerator and denominator by 5 when we do this. If you look, I now have 20 sections on my model. I have 5 rows of 4. So instead of fourths, I now have 20ths. And instead of having one piece shaded, I now have 5 pieces shaded. So what we did was we took our one piece that was shaded and we multiplied that times 5, which now gives us 5 pieces shaded. We took our 4 sections at the beginning that showed fourths, multiplied those by 5, and now we have 20ths. So it's this part of the lesson that's important. We're looking at the multiplication that occurs when we change our fourths to 20ths. On my 3/5 model, I'm going to draw the fourths. So I've drawn my fourths vertically, and again, you can see instead of having 3 pieces shaded, I now have 12 pieces shaded. There's 4 pieces in each row, and there are 3 rows. Instead of having 5 pieces as my whole, or fifths, I now have 20 pieces. I got these numbers by multiplying both the numerator and the denominator by 4. 3 times 4 is 12, 5 times 4 is 20. And again, it's this multiplication that we want to focus on in this lesson. So now my problem is 5 20ths plus 12 20ths. 5 plus 12 is 17, and they're all 20ths. So my final answer is 17 20ths. Here's another example. This time we have 2/3 plus 3/5. Start by drawing my 2/3 on the first model. Here are my thirds. I'll shade in 2 of the pieces. So this shows 2/3. I'll draw my fifths on the second model. And I'll shade in 3 of those. So this shows 3/5. In order to find my like denominators, I'll now draw my fifths on top of my thirds. And we're going to look mathematically at what we've done there. So we had 2/3. And we multiplied both the numerator and the denominator by 5. Instead of having 2 shaded sections, I now have 10, because there's 5 in each column. And instead of having 3 portions as my whole, or thirds, I now have 15ths. There's 15 smaller pieces. And again, to get there, I just multiply my numerator and my denominator times 5. That got me to 10/15. In my next model, I'll draw my thirds. And we can see that we started with 3/5. 3 pieces were shaded, but now I have 9 pieces shaded, which means that I multiplied the numerator by 3. instead of having 5 pieces that made up my whole, I now have 15 pieces. So 3/5 is now the same as 9/15. And again, we multiplied the numerator and the denominator by 3 when we drew our thirds on top of our fifths. So now I'm going to add 10/15 to 9/15, and I get 19/15. I can see that I can turn this into a mixed numeral because I have more than one whole. I can think of 19/15 as the same thing as 15/15 and 4/15. 15/15 is one whole, and then I still have 4/15 to make up the rest of the answer. Again, our focus is on how are we multiplying the numerator and the denominator when we make our like fractions, because we eventually want to transition off of using the fraction model to get those like denominators.